Yo, yo. Can you guys hear me okay? Microphone check 1, 2.
I don't want to make a difference anymore. Just give me the easy option. Let me step back in line and feed me my opinions and assumptions. Tell me what to think, what to love, give me someone to hate. Give me perpetual war on TV and turn the news into entertaining sound bites easy on the ears and snappy. Keep me chemically happy, as long as I can't see it. It isn't really happening. As long as I can't see it and you tell me it's not my problem, I'll ignore them. Get outraged.
Thank you, Emily.
When instructed, but do nothing. Just keep walking, just keep working. Take my life force.
How's everybody doing?
And the ending of it all, you'll have something, I'll have nothing. Just give me the good life and tell me it's all right. I don't want to know anymore.
Thank you, TTM.
Keep me blinded, take my rights, hold me down, restrict my thoughts and control my movements. I like to be watched, it makes me feel a safe little consumer. Deprive my senses, it's a thin line between life and existence. I want to be average, no longer class liberal misfit. Just give me the one world government.
What's going on, Burberry?
Just give me the class-based society where I know I'm insignificant, and I know that I can't fight it, and I know that it's decided, all above my head by those who keep on taking what I've provided. A simple life, so please just plug me into entertainment. Save me from a life of responsibility, give me containment. Keep me constricted, physically and mentally restricted. Leave me fear of open spaces, leave me blind to all your cages. I don't trust you, I don't believe you're right, but I don't care. I don't trust you, I don't know you, but I know that fighting is to spare. I don't trust you, I don't believe you're good or well intended. You don't know me, but that doesn't change the fact that you control me.
What's up, Anthony? What up, what up? Hey, Patricia. What up, what up? Good to see everybody. All right. So what are you guys making of all this Stephenson case and people comparing it to the Delphi case? What do you make of all that? Are you jumping to conclusions? Hey, what up? What's up, Grizz? How you doing? Thanks, Kelly. What's going on, everybody? What's up, Tech? Casper, Miss Dog Lover, Tax. Good to see you. Reach into my soul. Monsoon season in Indiana. Yeah, we got some snow out here the other day. Sleuth, did you get to see my comment that I left? The longer one, I was like the sixth one on, I think, segment part 2. I don't know. Maybe. Was that a joke to the jumping to conclusions? If so, funny. So this show is going to be more about what we can find in the details, what we can find hidden in Kentucky law enforcement's curiosity. You know, they say the devil's in the details. So we're really going to focus on maybe what was revealed about the Delphi crime scene, and why they're backtracking now. You know, I think if they were to find a connection, the implications it would have for the Richard Allen case would be huge for the defense. That would be helping them, saying, hey, we got a murder over here that's possibly connected to a murder with your guy, but we have no interest in your suspect. That doesn't help the Delphi case. So if there was any connection made, it would benefit law enforcement to, you know, start to maybe take a few steps back on the information that's been released. Because one thing we now know from having this case pop up in the news is I pulled some earlier media coverage on it, and there's a lot more details about the crime scene. And we'll take a look at that. But I'm more curious about your guys' opinion. I mean, I don't see any connection to it directly. I'm more curious in their curiosity, you know, this object. Some of the information that I found, it's kind of more, it's more specific about the trucker and the trucker being related to Delphi, but for some reason being in Fort Wayne. So please explain to me how a trucker from Fort Wayne that's connected to that case has anything to do with Delphi. Explain that. Hey, what's up, Dave? Good to see you. I don't know. I don't know, Starla. Poor Sean, though. Rest in peace. That poor guy. He was tormented. What's going on, Mandy? Hey, Deb. Good to see you. Guys, go check out Deb's True Crime Notebook. Great channel. Indy says, I think it may have something to do with other actors in this crime. To me, the interesting thing about all of this is how rare it is. First of all, to have 2 victims in a crime is already rare, rarer than most murders. Now, to have multiple victims staging and moving and all of that kind of stuff, signatures and things like that, extremely rare. We're going to go over those numbers here, but I think it's like 1.3% in most findings. So it's extremely rare. So now you have these 2. So it's like twice as rare. But not only that, they also believe that the killers were kind of hanging out post-mortem for a while for some reason, doing things when the victims had already passed. So, I mean, it's rare on rare on rare. So for that to happen and for them to be looking into Delphi, it may not be directly connected, but it may say something about the killer and maybe even the motivation. And what was this object? You know, is this a murder weapon? Is this something that was used? I found out that there were symbols left at the Stephenson case at the crime scene. So we haven't heard anything in regards to Delphi about symbols, but maybe that's another hidden detail. Rhonda says, I wasn't connecting the two, but keeping an open mind. Well, we're going to go through all the information. We're going to weigh the pros and the cons. We're going to look at both sides, connected, not connected. We're going to look at some recent quotes from Kentucky investigators, basically saying that, they no longer see it that way. But then we're going to go to that very same day that comment was made, and they're going to say a contradictory statement. And we're going to watch all of that. First, though, because I think what we're going to talk about more is about the rarity of these kind of crime scenes. And then I'll show you guys what I found from, I think one report was from 2012 and another one was 2018. All right, now this is from the Journal of the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law. It was titled Ritual and Signature in Serial Sexual Homicide, and this is from 2010. Ritual and signature are fantasy-driven, repetitive crime scene behaviors that have been found to occur in serial sexual homicide. Notwithstanding numerous anecdotal case reports, ritual and signature have rarely been studied empirically in a national sample of 38 offenders and their 162 victims. We examine behavioral and thematic consistency as well as the evolution and uniqueness of these crime scene actions. The notions that serial sexual murderers engage in the same rituals and leave unique signatures at every scene was not supported by our data. In fact, the result suggests that the crime scene conduct of this group of offenders is fairly complex, and varied implications of these findings for forensic assessment and criminal investigations are discussed. So there's certain things that they found that is backed up by actual data. We're going to go over that, but I think we'll start with the two media clips that I found in regards to the Stephenson case and the information that's provided before the Delphi case even took place. So I think that's a good place to start.
Corbett joins us live from Oak Brook Condominiums, where the two were murdered. And Dave, so does this new DNA evidence clear Charles Stephenson?
No, not necessarily. They know of one person because of DNA, but that doesn't necessarily mean that person acted alone. That's not to say that there were multiple people, but they just know of one right now because of DNA.
Our lives were changed in an instant when our parents, two of the most loving and caring people God ever created, were brutally and senselessly murdered.
Where it was discovered, it could only come from one person, and that person is the murderer.
Have you checked the DNA of Charles Robert Stephenson?
We have. I can tell you that's not his DNA.
These detectives say they've interviewed over 250 people in 14 states.
You've already
What's up,
gone back
Ruckus?
to those people that you previously interviewed as people of interest and checked their DNA?
Or in the course of the investigation, gotten it when we interviewed them.
Their killer's DNA is now in the FBI's system and is not a match to anyone, anywhere, who's ever given up a DNA sample either voluntarily or involuntarily. That is, anywhere the FBI's system covers.
This individual has to be careful not to make any mistakes in a lot of different areas, not just in the fact that he may be arrested for a crime that gets him put into the system somewhere in the penal system, but he can't make any mistakes to where his DNA would come up to any place where it would be compared to this system. We're hoping to jar somebody's memory. We're hoping that you remember back and something about what somebody said was suspicious, that they couldn't account for their time, that maybe they were injured. Maybe that's how the DNA was left.
One
Okay, to me, that's blood evidence, right? The DNA sounds like blood, maybe. Maybe they're doing some weird stuff with blood.
day, we will stand face to face in a courtroom, and you will face justice for the despicable, cowardly act you committed against our family.
Their family said the $100,000 reward is only good for 90 days, and they did that because they want anyone who knows anything, no matter how insignificant they may think it is, or whether you think the detectives already know about it or not, they want you to call and let them know.
Okay, so that one was from 2012, and everything's going to be linked in the description, even the articles I pulled from these different journals.
Couple
they're
described
pretty
as
interesting.
caring and giving, people of God spreading the word of the Lord. So who would want them dead?
May 29, 2011, which was 7 years ago, that crime scene, of all the crime scenes I've been on, was the most unique by far.
That kind of reminds me of Doug Carter. Be patient with this, guys. Never have we, he says, never before in my career have I stood in front of something like this. What does that mean? There's something very strange about both of these crime scenes, that if not the same killer, maybe the same type of killer, or maybe it's the same motivation.
Boone County Detective Coy Cox says this is an old case and not a cold case because he carries it with him every day.
I'm not a young guy, and I've made the comment to many people that the day this case is solved, I'll retire the next day. So yes, it would mean a lot.
7 years ago this month, Bill and
Mandy says there must be wounds after death at various stages of decomposition. Yeah, because of something that he had implanted in him, they're able to know that, hey, he died at this time, but yet these wounds occurred. Most likely, probably because the way that maybe the blood reacts to the wound. The heart's not really pumping. Somehow, they can determine that, hey, they died at this time, but we know that this wound didn't take place until this time. Or it's this old.
Peggy Stephenson were found murdered in their Florence, Kentucky home. Years earlier, WLWT actually did a story on Bill in 2000. He was a deacon at a local church and oversaw the Truckers' Chapel on Kentucky 18, sharing his faith with...
See, just before this happened, they did a special on him, so he kind of gained some notoriety here. I don't know who this gentleman is here, but...
with men and women who spend most of their lives away from home and on the road.
Breaker 19. Hey guys,
Breaker,
this is
Breaker.
Truckers Christian Chapel.
We're going to have church service in here if you want to come on in and join us.
11 years after we shared this story on our news, Bill and his wife were brutally killed. Cause of death, stabbing, and blunt force trauma. But the crime scene...
Okay, did you guys hear what they just stated there?
If were brutally killed. Cause of death, stabbing, and blunt force trauma.
They're no longer providing that information to the public. They're withholding that information. And we know in regards to Delphi, there was that edged weapon that was used.
But the crime scene is something investigators and federal experts are still scratching their heads about.
There were symbols, there were items
What's up,
that
Michelle?
were used at the scene to indicate strong feelings or opinions about the victims.
Did you guys catch that? Did you guys catch what he said there? Go ahead and type it there in the comments. I want to see who caught what he said. See who's paying attention. There you go, Jinx. Thanks, Ruckus. Right, let me scroll on down. If I miss you, it's because I'm scrolling down to see if anybody caught that. Super sleuth. Oh, we got a winner. Of course, it'd be Vanessa. She's a super sleuth. All right, I had to rewind. Symbols and items, most likely about, yep, symbols. Lori and Susie. So let's run that back a little bit.
At the scene to indicate.
Investigators and federal experts are still scratching their heads about.
There were symbols, there were items that were used at the scene to indicate
items, there's that word.
Strong feelings or opinions about the victims.
How can you use items to show your disdain? What item can be used to show disdain? There were items. Maybe pictures of them, you know, burned images. Like, I wonder what that means.
Phil and Peggy.
Detective Cox says the evidence proves the killer or killers were either with the bodies for several hours or came back to the home long after the murders. No eyewitnesses, no murder weapon found. The home was cleaned, the bodies staged in a certain way.
Clean, the home was cleaned.
With odd items. Cox won't call it a satanic ritual or sacrifice, but he does believe the killer was trying to communicate something.
Crazy. I mean, whenever you stage, from what I read, and I don't really know what the hell I'm talking about, but this is straight from FBI bulletins and from their journals. They're basically saying anytime you stage or do anything like that, it could fall into that category as a ritual.
But he does believe
it's
the
like
killer
their
was
ritual.
trying to communicate something. So tonight, the lead detective wants you, the person who did this, to get in touch anonymously, perhaps a letter with no return address, or a disposable burner cell phone. However you do it, Detective Cox.
Did you hear that? All right. I want to see who caught that one. Overt disrespect of Christian symbols could fit the description. Smearing filth on Bibles, for instance. What about somebody who is like a radical Christian and is saying, hey, what you're doing is wrong, or maybe knows a secret about somebody and is like, you're not like a real Christian, you know? Or something like that. But I do believe it could be, I don't know. I feel like there's some type of dark force involved, at least with Delphi. Upside down cross. Yep, Ophelia, burner cell phone.
Is ready for you to reach out. I won't call it a satanic ritual or sacrifice, but he does believe the killer was trying to communicate something. So tonight, the lead detective wants
disposable phone.
The person who did this, to get in touch anonymously, perhaps a letter with no return address, or a disposable burner cell phone. However you do it, Detective Cox is ready for you to reach out.
I realize that you're not going to come and sit down and say, hey, I did
burner
this,
phone.
let me tell you what I did. But the why, I think, would be part of what you want us to know, part of the message that you were trying to get to us. And I
Yeah,
would ask
pure
you to
evil.
communicate.
Either way.
I will work with you. I'll communicate back to you in some kind of social form.
The tips keep coming in. Cox and fellow investigators have interviewed hundreds of people of interest. He says circumstantial evidence has narrowed down the search.
We do have, I'm going to say individuals, plural, at this time, that we have been keeping tabs on for 7 years.
Cox says he and his team are tightening the circle, constantly chatting with folks who have had dealings with these people of interest. He says someday that mistake will be made, and he'll get to tell Bill and Peggy's family a killer has been caught.
May not be today, may not be next month, may not be next year, maybe 10 years down the road. But this case will be solved.
We're going to put a number on your screen right now. If you know anything, call this tip line, 859-334-8496. Cox telling me that police collected DNA evidence at the scene, producing the profile of a suspect, but it didn't match anyone in the national database.
All right, so
Crazy.
Described as care.
Okay. So it's almost like somebody who was like a normal member of society out of nowhere like comes out of the shadows and commits these crimes. They're almost ritualistic. So it's like somebody who lives a normal life but has a connection to the underworld, so to speak. And I think that has a lot to do with the unable to trace the DNA. You know, these are maybe like some type of ringleader. But Anna Lissette says the tangible similarity in these crimes is a mysterious item. Exactly. Said to be created rather than bought. A man in Indiana has one of these items, but could explain why he has it. Exactly. And how did the tipster know that this item was relevant in both cases? And oftentimes when they refer to the tipster and they quote the tipster is saying we believe. So I think that leads me to believe that it is law enforcement, FBI, or somebody connected, some group. It's some we, they. So if they're reaching out to Kentucky, that means they have intimate knowledge of something that was used at their crime scene that nobody knows of. And they also have intimate knowledge that this item was used in Delphi. And why would a trucker in Fort Wayne have this item and also be connected? So is this like maybe some kind of cult? Some kind of group of radicalized secret group? I mean, why are the crime scenes so strange? Why is there this non-secular aspect? And we keep forgetting about that. There's non-secular with the Delphi case, and then we have this man who is obviously a preacher. And the killer's wanting to show disdain, but they also wouldn't call it a satanic ritual. Alex Voorhees is a tipster. How is Alex Voorhees a we? Is he with a group of tipsters? Oh, that's interesting. I wonder how he knew about this item in both cases. I think you might want to ask that question first. Hey, what's up, Miss Emily? Ellen. worship Odin or Norse god. Has anybody else heard this? I've heard something along those lines, that was possibly the symbol that was left in Delphi was related to that. So I'm wondering if this is some kind of conflict, a spiritual battle. Ruckus says, if it's satanic cult in nature, Eric Williams may know about it. Oh, God. All right, let's keep going here. Alex is a hacker and has done a lot of research on the case. But how does he know about the item that was found at the crime scene? And how does he know that that item was found in Kentucky? Because whoever tipped this in had intimate knowledge of that. Interesting. So the next thing we're going to kind of look at is, I guess, I don't know what you would call this, a blog. L.R. Gordon. We're going to read part of her essay here. And this is just kind of a preview of her blog. I just took a screenshot. It's pretty cool. Let's see. About me. My name is L.R. Gordon, and I really like to write about true crime. I almost exclusively cover unsolved cases. Please note that although I may occasionally adopt a somewhat lighthearted tone in my writing, I never intend any disrespect to the victims. And then she kind of goes on from there. Link is in the description. All right, let me pull up this essay. This essay is really long, but I'm going to skip to the part where she kind of talks about the crime scene specifically. What's up, Hybrid? All right. Essay is titled The Murder of Bill and Peggy Stephenson. And I think she put this out in 2018. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Early in 2022. I think June. Okay, now we have to discuss what we know about the scene at the condo on May 29th, 2011. We know that the couple had been the victims of bludgeoning and stabbing, and that the weapons used were not found at the scene. Although there were no weapons at the scene, law enforcement does know the specific weapon that was used. Okay, now this person has done some extensive research on this case, and basically includes all the information that is now hush-hush. Colt Heron says Norse history and mysticism, as well as satanic overtones, sounds like something right out of white jailhouse culture in upper Midwest. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like it's kind of known in that area, from what I've seen anyway. Another Delphi rumor is a peace sign was left at the scene. Okay, so it says here, according to this article, They know the weapon that was used. So I'm wondering if it was maybe like a hammer or axe, which is, I think it's prevalent in that religion, or even like sects or cults, I guess. Rescue all the dogs. It's a cool name. Thanks for your research, Sleuth. Thanks for your calm demeanor. So relaxing. Thank you for hanging out. All right, I'm going to continue on here. We know that the scene had been cleaned, but more strangely, it had also been heavily staged. The bodies had been posed in separate rooms, although exactly what is meant by this is one of many details the investigators are keeping close to their vests. The killers had left a message in the home, presumably written. Not only had the bodies been subject to post-mortem manipulation, but items in the home had been staged as well. Some of these items had positioned around the bodies, while others had been moved to what investigators believe were different places within the condo than their original location. Items had been moved, altered, and rearranged in every room of the home, adding to the utterly bizarre nature of the scene. A couple's photographs had been tampered with, being arranged in such a way as to suggest the killer liked certain people and disliked others. What does that mean? You think certain people were cut out or ripped out of the images? Colt Heron says Thor's hammer is probably the most iconic symbol of this culture. Candles. That's what I was thinking earlier when he mentioned items. Items used. Clean, posed, moved. Hey, Cold Truth. Cox said that the person in northern Indiana gave a reason why they had the item. I wonder what it was. I wonder if it was a religious reason. I wonder what would make it specific and unique to this guy. Because, I mean, if it was a knife, all guys have knives, even most girls. So it couldn't have been just a knife. Maybe a homemade knife, homemade style knife, homemade hammer, homemade, I don't know. Maybe it's like a hook knife, some type of homemade hunting, indigenous type knife. I mean, what the hell could it be? And how does one person say, hey, well, this guy if you guys are looking for a weird knife, like, hey, this guy over here in Delphi has a very similar knife, or a guy that has connections to Delphi and also has connections to the Stephenson case. But what about this trucker? How is he connected? Did he just go through there maybe? At one point in time, he stopped at that little church there that he had going on. Initials. Yeah, and why, and what was the explanation for a unique item? And could we assume it was a bladed weapon? Could we assume that? Or is that a jump? Too much of a jump. What's that, Jinx? Bolin? Homemade knives, yeah. It's fairly common. Jessica says, do you mean the Sons of Odin Motorcycle Club? Sons of Odin Motorcycle Club. Interesting. I've heard a lot about them since I was looking into Delphi. But I don't know. I don't know anything about their reputation or anything. I think I'm just more familiar with that name, Sons of Odin, I think. To whatever at CS. Personally, I am Catholic, so I can think of lots of religious items. Creeps like to deface and abuse symbols like crucifixes, rosaries, icons. Creeps like to shock those who believe. Yeah, I read a lot about hold on. I think my thing's frozen. There we go. Okay. Oh, it's a sickle-shaped blade. I think I know what you're referring to. Handmade item at both crime scenes. Yeah, maybe they were motivated by the same thing. Some type of ritual. Like maybe the killers aren't connected, but what they did and the reason that they did it, maybe they're connected that way. All right. I'm going to continue on for the sake of time. Investigators with the Boone County Sheriff's Department would describe it as the scene that the killer wanted found and not the crime scene. Detective Coy Cox was one of the original lead investigators on the case, and since being assigned to the cold case unit of the Criminal Investigation Division, he has been reviewing it again. He had this to say about the scene inside the condo. There were things that were maybe on the end tables or up on shelves that were changed, altered, moved, turned over, marked on. Okay, marked on, so that must be what was going on with the pictures. Marked on. There were items that seemed to have no significant meaning left in different rooms. Most of the items that were left at the scene appeared to be things that were probably in the residence. He stated that it was the most unique crime scene that he had ever seen, and that it is his belief that some of the staging was done to suggest different motives. The attack on the couple was a brutal instance of overkill, which could be read as a more personal motive. Some signs pointed to robbery. However, there were valuable items that would have been easy targets for theft that were left behind. Some elements even suggested a ritualistic tone to the crime, to the point that law enforcement obtained a list of self-described Wiccans in the area. However, one expert stated that there are no elements of a genuine ritual present, suggesting this may have been coincidental or another attempt at misdirection. In addition to concealing the motive, some of the repositioning is speculated to have been used to obscure the point of entry. So I'm thinking maybe pentagram, maybe? Yeah, that's true, Digital. I heard him say that. That was caught on video. Did they ever find him, rule him out? I didn't know that, Lake Michigan. They caught him on video, huh? That the item is made rather than purchased. Indiana man was able to explain how he obtained the item. Yeah, what is this item? And I think they even mentioned maybe torture or something after. Maybe there was like an item burned or what is that called? Branding. Soldiers of Odin and Sons of Odin. Soldiers used to be led by a really bad dude turned into a racial hate club. Yeah, usually when I read about it, it's like a prison gang, from my understanding. Maybe a photo. Like, how did he get this item? And how would somebody from the outside looking in, like a tipster, know that this guy has this item and be like, hey, I was looking in the Delphi case and I noticed that, this same guy who's connected to Delphi has this item, but he's also connected to Kentucky. Quorum Dio Assembly. What's up? That's interesting. He was a deacon, huh? Kentucky investigators reportedly sought out and interviewed people in the community who claimed to be Wiccan. Yeah, I wonder why. I'm thinking pentagram, maybe. Maybe there was a pentagram left there, pentagram drawn. B. Phillips, yeah, we do. I've been looking. Something related to geocache entered my mind too. Yeah, it does sound like Robert Ives. Exactly like Robert Ives, Miss Kitty. All right. Let's see. A couple more paragraphs here. An autopsy would determine that Bill and Peggy died between 1 and 4 a.m. on the morning of the 29th. The precise time of death is known, at least for one of the victims, due to a medical device that had been implanted in the body of that victim. This may have been a pacemaker, defibrillator, or some other medical device capable of recording time. Law enforcement has never released what that time was. One of the victims also had a post-mortem injury that had been inflicted at least 2 hours after that victim died. If we use the 1 to 4 a.m. time interval, this means that the killer may have still been in the apartment at 6 a.m. or possibly even later. Investigators also think it possible that the killer left the scene during the night and returned later to inflict the injury and to continue with the staging. That's so weird. One thing I read also today is that usually when staging occurs, it's an older male, and it's usually because he has a personal relationship with the victims. Somebody, and this is from the FBI, somebody that has no relation, they would just kind of come in, commit the murder, and then leave. Somebody who has a relationship, would try to make it appear as a fake robbery or do these certain weird things. So I wonder if they did know him or if they were just items that they needed to fulfill a fantasy. I don't know, Digital. I'll have to take a look. People make knives out of railroad spikes. Yeah, I guess you could just hammer it down, huh? Just get it red hot. Strike it with the iron. Looked like it was something that it wasn't. Yeah, very unique. And Cox said the same thing that Carter said. He's like, when we solve this crime, then I'll retire, or something like that. I think Carter said something similar. Like, we'll solve this before I retire. But you guys hang out for a second. I need to grab another bottled water. It's Cottonmouth. Just one moment. Thank you, Miss Dog Lover. With the super chat, if that guy ended up in the possession of some kind of trophy, then how? Apparently, he had a good reason for having it. I don't know if it was a trophy. Sounds more like some type of a weapon, like a specific or unique weapon. Okay, let me go ahead and finish up this essay here. There is another strange comment from Cox. He said that the person who killed Bill and Peggy may have believed themselves justified in their actions, and that their motive may have been rooted in a disagreement over correct Christian practices. There could be multiple interpretations of this statement, but the thing I can't help wondering is if religious paraphernalia might have been among the staged items. Perhaps this was done in such a way as to indicate that the killer did not believe the victims were properly following church doctrine. As Bill and Peggy were universally lauded for their kind and charitable natures, I cannot even begin to speculate why this would have been. But there's a lot about this case I don't claim to understand. And this is just a very small portion of the essay, so I'll definitely go check it out. Link is in the description. Okay. So now we're going to look at some flip-flopping apparently from Detective Coy Cox here. This was released yesterday from a member of WRTV, an ABC network here. All right, so I quote, "I can tell you that at this point in time, we do not see a connection. We initially looked at it. We really didn't see the Stephenson part of what was being articulated to us. We certainly appreciate the information coming in. We appreciate the tips and we investigate all of those. So we encourage those, but we really didn't make the same connection that the tipster had made in the case." So that's what Cox had to say to this WRTV member. Now let's hear from Detective Cox here from his own mouth just a few months ago.
2022, a tip led them
Looking like that is our individual.
In November 2022, a tip led them to a neighboring state.
We had received some information from an individual regarding the Delphi murders in Indiana, and they had said for all of these reasons, we believe it may be the same person that was involved in the Stephenson case.
Right away, detectives
Who's
started
we?
looking into a possible connection between Bill and Peggy's 2011 murder and the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi, Indiana in 2017, a case that's garnered national attention.
There's things that will make you really interested in a case, simply more than just somebody saying, hey, we think this person might have been involved.
Okay, so that's kind of what he's saying now, right? This is what he's acting. This is how he's acting now, but he wasn't acting like that then.
Things that will make you really interested in a case, simply more than just somebody saying, hey, we think this person might have been involved. But we had a little piece of information that really made that case.
Piece of information that really made that case.
Specifically interesting to us.
The information pointed Boone County investigators toward a specific person who had a specific item they were interested in.
I'm not going to tell you about that, what that item was. We've recently been in the northern part of Indiana,
Fort Wayne.
this guy, following him around, looking for things, collecting all of the information and the evidence that we would need to at least vet him as best we could with our case. He was cooperative. We were able to go down that path with him, and he articulated good reason to why that may have existed.
Okay, let's listen to this one more time, and then we'll go read his statement.
Investigating this guy, following him around, looking for things.
Investigating this guy, following him around, going to another state. You know what I mean? So let's take a look at this statement again. Now that we know all this law enforcement activity, we're talking about going crossing state lines, and then as of yesterday, this is what we get. I can tell you that at this point in time, we do not see a connection. Okay. When we initially looked at it, we really didn't see the Stephenson part of what was being articulated to us. Okay. So wouldn't you be able to make that determination when you got the tip? Why would you go all the way across an entire state to Fort Wayne, follow some guy around, vet him, if this statement is true? When we initially looked at it, we really didn't see the Stephenson part of what was being articulated to us. This doesn't seem like a truthful statement, but I could be wrong. Let's take a look at something else. You know, you would think that when law enforcement and these investigators get closer to solving a case, that they would reveal more information. But the truth is, they begin to reveal less. The only reason you have information at all is because they need to further their goal. They need to get closer to apprehending their suspect or finding out who this person is. The only reason they would ever tell you, us, is to garner tips, generate tips. Now, the reason why they would stop providing information is because they may have a lot more information. And they don't need us right now. And here's a good example.
The judge signed a probable cause affidavit for the arrest of him. I can't wait to tell the story, but today's not the day.
Not today, huh?
You think you can tell that story?
We're going to let the courts decide.
In other words, let them decide when they can release
So
that
you
PC.
caught the bridge guy
Well,
then,
and
right?
then even then, remember, even then, when the PC is released, due process is still a piece of all this puzzle. And
Let's try this again. Hey, Doug. So you caught the bridge guy, huh?
the judge signed a probable cause affidavit for the arrest of him.
That's not a yes.
I can't wait to tell the story, but today's not the day.
When do you think you can tell that story?
We're going to let the courts decide.
In other words, let them decide when they can release that PC.
Well, and then
Okay. So there's a perfect example of when we now have, if not 50% of the story, almost all of it, and law enforcement becomes tight-lipped. So we're seeing a pattern with that. Okay, now this is, I believe, Fox interviewing Cox yesterday morning, just before he released. This is just prior to him releasing that statement to WRTV. He gave this interview to Fox. Very interesting.
With this cold case, an investigator
in Delphi did spend time after the murders doing whatever it was that they were doing, which is similar to the Stephenson case.
Kind of cases like the 1% kind of cases that you see.
1%.
Detective Cox made it clear.
1%. That's how flopping going on there with Mr. Cox. So hopefully we can get that cleared up. Let me see what else I got here.
The unsolved murders of Abby Williams.
So this is when they first released the Ron Logan search warrant affidavit, and they kind of became fact. A lot of rumors became fact at this point in time, but they talk a lot about in this report the staging of the bodies. So let's take a look here. Russ McQuaid.
The Unsolved Murders of Abby Williams and Libby German provided us a copy of this search warrant, and it reveals new facts about the crime scene where the girls' bodies were found out back on Ron Logan's Carroll County property on February 14th, 2017.
This is the gate they left down.
2 days after the bodies were discovered, Ron Logan showed
Right,
us
Kenny?
around his property that backs up to Deer Creek and sits at the bottom of the gorge where the Monon High Bridge towers up above, where Libby German and Abby Williams met the man who took their lives.
Okay, there's the crime scene down there. See how the ground's much more matted down right in here? I think you're right there.
The search warrant from March 17th, 2017, recently made public, reveals Libby German shot 43 seconds of video on her cell phone of this man following them on the bridge at approximately 2:13 p.m. on February 13th. And at noon the next day, the girls' bodies were found on Logan's property. There was quite a loss of blood, and the investigators think the killer may have gotten some of that blood on him. An item of clothing was missing from one of the girls, and, quote, it also appeared the girls' bodies were moved and staged, leading investigators to theorize that the killer took a souvenir from the crime scene.
That's just, I mean, that's so crazy right there. So I think I wanted to focus more on how rare these type of crime scenes are and what specifically is connecting the two. So if anything, maybe that tells us more about the motive than anything, right? Let's take a look here at some of these articles. We'll just, before we get out of here, we'll hit bits and pieces of them. This one's from the Journal of Forensic Science. Looks like posted, titled Staging and Posing, and this is 2004. The act of leaving a victim's body in an unusual position is a conscious criminal action by an offender to thwart an investigation, shock the finder and investigators of the crime scene, or give perverted pleasure to the killer. The unusual position concepts, the posing and staging a murder victim, have been documented thoroughly and have been accepted by the courts as a definable phenomenon. One staging case and one posing case are outlined and reveal characteristics of those homicides. From the Washington State Attorney General's Homicide Investigation and Tracking Systems database on murder, covering the years from 1981 to 2000, a total of 5,224 cases, the relative frequency of unusual body dispositions is revealed as a very rare occurrence. Only 1.3% of victims are left in an unusual position, with 0.3% being posed and 0.1% being staged. The characteristics of these types of murders also set them apart compared to all other murders. In staged murders, the victims and killers are on average older. All victims and offenders in the staged murders are white. In this study here, I'm going to show you a situation where this actual killer was not, he was black, with victims being disproportionately white in murders with any kind of unusual body disposition. So normally they would be a white male. Likewise, females stand out as victims when the body is posed, staged, or left in other unusual positions, whereas posed bodies are more likely to include sexual assault. Often in serial murders, there is no evidence of either in the staged cases. Lastly, when a body is left in an unusual position, binding is more likely, as well as the use of more hands-on means of killing the victim, such as stabbing, cutting, weapons, bludgeons, ligatures, or hands and feet. All right, we'll skip these other articles because we are running out of time. This is interesting here. Take a quick look. So there's a case of staging here, the George Russell case. He was African American, so that's one, like, talk about super rare. So he would probably, I can't remember how they caught him, but he most likely wouldn't have been in their profile. I thought that was interesting. Well, I think that's it, guys. I think I'm out of time. We'll hang out in the chat here for a moment or two. Then we'll get out of here. See what you guys have to say. Ruckus, how can I contact Alex? Anyone have his contact information? I don't know who he. I know who he is, but I don't know him. They're relying on Richard Allen's attorney to find the killer. Shit, that'd be a good person to look to. Especially if they got some pretty hard evidence on him. He's going to be looking to make a deal. I knew DC wasn't believing it when he said that. Right, Indy? Or, well, it's just, it was so vague. It's like, what, is he the guy on the bridge and the killer, or is he just the guy on the bridge and he assisted in the murder? It's like, come on. It's like after all of this, you make an arrest and now you're tight-lipped. That's what happens. When there's movement, the backtracking starts. They don't need your input anymore. They now need to conceal. They need to muffle anything that we're trying to do. Channel over and over. Jerry, what up? Catch your live. How's everybody? How you doing? Thanks for hanging out. Mother of Dragons, what's up? Good to see you. So come on, guys. What do you think? What's going on? Oh, yeah, I think Fig. Reach out to Fig if you got his email. I think he talks with Alex. Or might know how to get a hold of him. Produces, I applaud Alex V for using his skills to assist. I don't know who the person is, so I don't know what he's using his skills to do. I don't know I don't know him well enough. It's called Trendifier. It's called Julian Duran now. Yeah, I think I remember that. I think that's how I first heard the name, Vanessa. Maryland Mayor News? No, I haven't. Hayoka Empath, what's up? New in chat, Stephenson case is local to me, and I thought their nephew did the deed, and another homicide victim was a woman in Indiana that was hairstylist, designer that he beat. Yeah, we covered that recently. I actually covered that a while ago in a members-only meeting, and it just popped back into my head. We covered it a while ago. Yeah, the guy tried to cut his throat in court. Yeah, I still need to go back and find that. I looked for it the other day, but it's got to be in the members because that's the only place I didn't look. The most I think we might get from this latest debacle is some ideas about exactly, Anne. That's the whole point. And that's why they're backtracking now, is because they're realizing what they've revealed. Oh, we weren't interested. There's no connection. Like, there may not be a connection, but there may be a connection. You know what I mean? They used the word parallel to Richard Allen previously, and what I'm thinking is the same motivation. Maybe the same type of group, same type of cult, same type of religious organization, same type of gang, maybe. So maybe this is something that they do, something they're known to do. I'm not sure. It's just strange to know that there's a specific item that sounds a lot like possibly a homemade weapon, and they're staging and moving bodies, and there's 2 victims, and it seems kind of ritualistic. To me, that's very alarming. And in both cases, it doesn't sound like the DNA matches. Because, I mean, that'd be end all. That'd be like serial killer, Oh, we got matching DNA from Delphi and then from Kentucky. But they don't have that. But what they have is an extremely violent crime with DNA at both crime scenes. This is also something they didn't mention. They have DNA at both crime scenes, but the DNA is not in a database. So I'm wondering, could this be young people committing the crime? Could this be somebody who is well known in the community? And then, kind of has connections to this underworld? Thanks, Stray. Yeah, hit the like button if you guys could. I'd appreciate it. It helps out a lot. True crime news. Hey, this looks like a new YouTube channel. What's going on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever the hell you're watching from? Oh, is that you, Anthony Greeno? Greeno's back at it. Connections, religious aspects, staging, signatures, misplaced items surrounding victims, physical damage done to the victims post-mortem, scenes designed to shock, outrage, and defile, which is extremely rare, and at both scenes with an item, with a specific item, which at one point Cox says, oh, there's sometimes people come forward with information. It's just like whatever. And then there's other times where it grabs your attention. What grabbed his attention? Later, guys. Yep, we're going to start closing her down. Thank you. Good to see you out and about. Jack the Ripper's main goal was to create outrage. That's another thing that I read this morning. A lot of times they would stage the crime scene and mutilate post-mortem to shock, the family as they came in, or investigators. So when they came in, they'd be like, oh my gosh. So what is the number one question you guys have for Detective Cox? Well, at this point, he's not going to be truthful anyway, in my opinion. Think about it. They're looking for a killer that could very well be the person. Well, this is the way they could spin it in court. Kentucky's looking for somebody who committed these murders that's extremely rare and very similar to what happened in Delphi, but they're not interested in Richard Allen. Imagine saying that in a courtroom in front of a jury. Of course, he's going to backtrack. Terry, Lisa. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Oh, Roro Joe, don't go chasing waterfalls and hit that like button. I like that. I like that. Shout out to Left Eye. Mayan, in mythology, Odin took out his own right eye. Yeah, exactly. It's also satanic as well. That's why you see, like, when people talk about the Illuminati, they're covering their right eye. Stuff like that. There you go. Speak with Alex right now. Put someone in contact. Oh, there you go. There's your Alex connection. Let's see. I think this track's about 5 minutes. Thanks, Lisa. Me neither, Ruckus. No scrubs. Hey, you better hit that like button, guys. You don't be no scrub. Thanks, D. Thank you, Colt. Thanks for your input in the chat. There he is. Bogey says cow poop. Horse shit. Could be, Bogey, could be. Shout out to the Kentucky cold case investigators for at least looking. Good for them. Good for I think today's live stream was more about the thought process, and good for them for going in that direction, whether they're no longer going in that direction or not. Good for them. Thanks, Mel. Thanks for hanging out and participating in the chat. Always good to see you. Mother of Dragons. Rose Scheid. You as well.
Responsibility, give me containment. Keep me constricted, physically and mentally restricted. Leave me fear of open spaces, leave me blind to all your cages. I don't trust you. I don't believe you're right, but I don't care. I don't trust you. I don't know you, but I know that fighting is despair. I don't trust you. I don't believe you're good or well intended. You don't know me, but that doesn't change the fact that you control me.
All right, guys. Peace out. Thanks again. If you're part of the replay crew, feel free to leave a comment. We'll check back, or if anybody has a follow-up comment, we can continue in the comment section. You guys have a safe weekend. Happy Friday.